For nearly 40 minutes, a U.S. Navy destroyer operating near the Strait of Hormuz simply disappeared from tracking systems relied upon by Allied navies across the region, its transponder silent, its last confirmed position sitting motionless on radar screens in a way that immediately triggered emergency protocols across the entire strike group. Within the hour, Iranian state media was broadcasting a very different story, claiming a direct missile strike had sent the vessel to the bottom of the Gulf, footage circulating of an explosion at sea that Tehran insisted showed the ship's final moments. The Pentagon's response, when it finally came, was carefully worded, deliberately calm, and conspicuously silent on the one detail everyone actually wanted to know. You are about to understand exactly what happened during those 40 minutes of silence, why Iran's claim does not hold up against what actually happened, and why the real story, stranger and more revealing than a sinking, tells you more about the true state of this confrontation than either side's public statements have been willing to admit. The confusion began the way most modern military crises actually begin, not with an explosion, but with an absence. Allied radar and satellite tracking systems monitoring the strike group's operating area near the strait registered the destroyer's transponder signal simply cutting out, a sudden and complete loss of the routine data stream that ships broadcast continuously as a matter of course. In isolation, a single-drop transponder signal would barely register as noteworthy, the kind of technical glitch that happens periodically without incident. What made this different was the timing. The signal loss occurred within minutes of Iranian fast attack craft and coastal radar installations, conducting what Allied intelligence would later describe as an unusually aggressive and sustained electronic warfare push against the strike group's operating area. A detail that transformed a routine technical anomaly into something far more alarming in the eyes of every commander watching the tracking screens go dark. Now you need to understand who was actually behind those 40 minutes of silence, because the explanation that eventually emerged is far more revealing about Iran's current military strategy than the sinking claim Tehran rushed to broadcast. According to officials briefed on the incident, Iranian electronic warfare units, operating from a combination of shore-based installations and the same fast attack craft doctrine involved in the earlier direct naval engagement, deployed a concentrated jamming and spoofing operation, specifically targeting the destroyer's transponder and communication systems, an attempt not to destroy the vessel, but to create exactly the kind of ambiguous, frightening gap in tracking data that Tehran could then fill with whatever narrative served its own purposes. You will be very surprised when you understand just how much of this incident, from the moment the signal dropped to the moment Iranian state media began broadcasting sinking footage, appears to have been planned as a coordinated information operation rather than a genuine attempt to sink an American warship at all. Before we go further, you need to meet someone, because behind the tracking data and the dueling public statements is a human reality that both sides' official narratives have tried to use for very different purposes. She is the spouse of a sailor serving aboard the destroyer in question, and in the 40 minutes before the Navy confirmed the ship was safe, she describes watching Iranian sinking footage circulate across social media, with no way to verify whether it was real, calling emergency family support lines that had no confirmed information to give her. "Nobody could tell me anything," she says. "I was watching video that claimed to show my husband's ship exploding, and the only honest answer anyone could give me was that they didn't know yet either." Keep her in mind. We will come back to her, because the gap between those 40 minutes of genuine uncertainty and what actually happened is the clearest possible window into how dangerous an information operation like this can be, regardless of whether a single shot was ever fired. To understand why Iran's sinking claim collapsed so quickly under scrutiny, you have to understand what actually happened once the destroyer's crew and the broader strike group worked through the jamming and restored full tracking and communication capability. The ship never lost propulsion, never sustained a hull breach, and at no point during the incident was the vessel actually struck by any weapon. What the crew experienced, according to officials familiar with the after-action report, was a sophisticated but ultimately survivable electronic attack, degraded navigation and communication systems that took the ship's crew roughly 40 minutes to fully restore using backup systems and manual procedures specifically designed for exactly this kind of contingency. The explosion footage that Iranian state media broadcast as evidence of a direct hit, when analyzed by independent open-source intelligence researchers within hours of its release, showed unmistakable inconsistencies. A vessel silhouette that did not match the destroyer's actual class, water displacement patterns inconsistent with a missile strike of the type Iran claimed, and metadata, suggesting the footage had been recorded at a different time and location entirely, very likely repurposed from an unrelated naval exercise or a previous incident altogether. This is the moment where you need to understand exactly why this matters, far beyond a single debunked video. Iran's willingness to manufacture and broadcast fabricated footage claiming the destruction of an American warship, represents a deliberate escalation in the information war running parallel to the actual military confrontation, a recognition inside Tehran that the psychological and political impact of a claimed American loss, even a false one, can generate real strategic value regardless of whether the underlying claim survives scrutiny. Regional analysts note that even after the footage was thoroughly debunked, versions of it continued circulating widely across social media platforms in the region, absorbed by audiences either unaware of or unconcerned with the technical analysis disproving it, exactly the kind of persistent disinformation effect that modern information warfare is specifically designed to produce. So now the obvious question, and it is the one being asked across every Allied capital watching this unfold. Does a fabricated sinking claim, definitively disproven within hours, actually represent a meaningful escalation? Or is it simply propaganda that changes nothing about the actual military balance on the ground? Here is where you need to resist dismissing this too quickly, because while the ship is confirmed safe and the claim is confirmed false, the operation that produced this incident reveals something genuinely significant about Iran's evolving strategy that pure skepticism about the propaganda risks missing entirely. The electronic warfare capability demonstrated in those 40 minutes, sophisticated enough to fully disrupt a modern American destroyer's tracking and communication systems for an extended period, represents a real and meaningfully concerning capability, regardless of the false narrative built on top of it. Iran did not sink an American warship, but Iran did demonstrate it can blind and isolate one, even temporarily, in the middle of an active strike group's operating area. And that capability carries real strategic weight, independent of whatever propaganda Tehran chose to attach to it afterward. This is the moment where the true cost of this incident has to be measured, and it is a genuinely unusual kind of cost. One measured less in physical damage and more in the corrosive effect of uncertainty itself. For the 40 minutes, the ship remained dark. Every Allied vessel in the strike group operated under the assumption that a genuine attack might be underway, a level of heightened alert and defensive readiness that carries real operational and psychological cost, even when the underlying threat turns out to be less severe than feared. Naval officials are now conducting an urgent review of exactly how a strike group's tracking systems could be disrupted this thoroughly, a review that will almost certainly drive significant new investment in hardened, jam-resistant communication systems across the fleet, an expensive and urgent priority shift triggered entirely by an incident that produced no actual physical damage to any vessel. The human cost, once again, sits closest to the families who experienced those 40 minutes with no way to distinguish genuine crisis from information warfare. Military family support networks across multiple naval bases reportedly fielded an unusual surge of calls during the incident. Families who had seen the circulating footage before any official confirmation was available, forced to sit with genuine uncertainty about a loved one's safety for far longer than the incident itself actually warranted, a direct and painful consequence of exactly the kind of information operation Iran appears to have deliberately engineered. Now, let's take the steelmen seriously, because there is a real argument that dismissing this incident as just propaganda understates a genuinely serious vulnerability that adversaries far more capable than Iran are watching closely. If a relatively contained Iranian electronic warfare operation could disrupt an American destroyer's tracking and communications for 40 full minutes inside an active, defended strike group's operating area, the implications for a peer adversary with dramatically more sophisticated electronic warfare capability, Russia or China, are genuinely alarming. Defense analysts note that this incident functions as an unintentional but valuable demonstration for exactly the kind of adversaries the United States considers its most serious long-term strategic competitors, a live proof of concept for how vulnerable even a well-defended modern warship's tracking and communication architecture can be to a determined, well-executed jamming operation. But here is where the wall of reality comes in, and it comes in with genuine clarity. The ship's crew, using precisely the backup systems and manual procedures built into naval doctrine for exactly this contingency, restored full capability within 40 minutes without any external intervention required, demonstrating that current resilience protocols, while not invulnerable, functioned essentially as designed under real operational pressure. And critically, the entire elaborate information operation Iran built on top of this jamming incident, the fabricated footage, the sinking claim, the attempt to convert a survivable electronic attack into a devastating propaganda victory, collapsed within hours under basic open-source scrutiny, a failure that reveals its own kind of strategic weakness. Iran possesses real electronic warfare capability. It does not yet possess the information warfare sophistication to make a fabricated claim survive contact with a modern, decentralized fact-checking environment. And that gap matters enormously for how much actual strategic value operations like this one can generate going forward. Now watch what happens next, because an incident this widely broadcast, however quickly debunked, does not stay contained for long. The first domino is the broader American and Allied naval posture across the Gulf, where every strike group now operates under an accelerated timeline for deploying hardened, jam-resistant tracking and communication upgrades that were previously scheduled over a period of years, compressed now into weeks, under the same urgent pressure that has driven every previous capability gap exposed throughout this confrontation. The second domino is the information environment itself, where fact-checking organizations and open-source intelligence researchers across the region now find themselves playing an increasingly central role in a conflict where the battle over what actually happened matters nearly as much as what actually happened. Regional media literacy organizations report a surge in requests for verification and analysis, a sign that at least some portion of the audience exposed to Iran's fabricated footage is actively seeking to understand what was real and what was manufactured, even as the false version continues circulating widely among audiences less inclined toward that scrutiny. The third domino runs through Iran's own domestic political messaging, where state media's rapid pivot away from the sinking claim, once independent analysis definitively debunked the footage, has created its own credibility problem. Independent Persian language outlets operating outside the country report that even some domestic Iranian audiences, increasingly accustomed to consuming information through channels beyond state media's control, greeted the sinking claim with visible skepticism from the outset, a sign that Tehran's information warfare apparatus may be losing effectiveness with exactly the domestic audience it most needs to convince. The fourth domino stretches into allied diplomatic circles, where the incident, however it ultimately resolved, has reinforced growing unease among European partners about the unpredictable, escalatory character of a confrontation where even a survivable electronic warfare incident can spiral into 40 minutes of genuine uncertainty about whether American sailors are alive or dead. Diplomatic sources describe renewed, urgent pressure for de-escalation channels specifically designed to prevent exactly this kind of dangerous ambiguity from recurring, aware that the next such incident may not resolve as cleanly. And then there's the fifth domino, the quiet one, playing out in the assessments of exactly the peer adversaries watching this unfold from a safe distance. Every lesson learned from this incident, the specific jamming techniques used, the exact duration of the disruption, the specific backup systems that ultimately restored capability, and the exact information warfare tactics deployed to exploit the resulting confusion is now being studied closely by intelligence services with far greater technical sophistication than Iran currently possesses. Sophistication that could someday combine effective jamming with information warfare convincing enough to survive scrutiny in ways this particular operation did not. While all of this plays out externally, the most consequential outcome may be the quiet erosion of trust the incident has revealed on both sides of the information environment surrounding this entire confrontation. American officials, having watched a fabricated claim spread widely before official confirmation could catch up, are reportedly reassessing how quickly and how transparently the Pentagon communicates during future incidents. Aware that the 40 minutes of official silence, however operationally necessary, created exactly the vacuum that allowed Iran's false narrative to spread unchallenged for as long as it did. Let's go back to the beginning, to the spouse who spent 40 minutes watching footage that claimed to show her husband's ship destroyed, with no official confirmation available to contradict it. In the time since, she describes those 40 minutes as the longest of her life, an experience she says has left her with a lingering unease that official reassurance, after the fact, has not fully resolved. She does not know, and neither does anyone outside the classified after-action review, exactly how close the strike group actually came to a genuine crisis during those minutes of silence, only that the uncertainty itself, real or manufactured, was allowed to exist for far longer than it should have, and that the next time a signal goes dark near the Strait of Hormuz, she is not sure she will be able to trust the silence to resolve as safely as it did this time. Iran built this incident around a simple, calculated bet that the psychological power of a claimed American loss would outrun the ability of anyone to disprove it before the damage was done. For 40 minutes, guided by fabricated footage and a strategically timed silence, that bet very nearly paid off. It ultimately failed, undone by the same modern information environment Iran had hoped to exploit. The destroyer's crew restored their systems, independent analysts debunked the footage, and the ship sailed on exactly where it had always been. Iran's state media can continue circulating whatever version of this story serves its purposes. The Pentagon can continue its careful, measured public statements about an incident it would clearly prefer to move past quickly. But every sailor's family who lived through those 40 minutes of genuine uncertainty, every analyst now studying exactly how a modern warship systems can be blinded, and every regional audience left wondering which version of this story to actually believe, already understands the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath the wreckage of a fabricated claim. The ship never vanished at all. What actually disappeared, for 40 dangerous minutes, was the truth itself, and it very nearly cost far more than a debunked video ever could. Thank you for watching. Please like the video and comment your thoughts, because this information war is only accelerating, and we will be here to separate fact from fabrication every step of the way.